The free market system, along with its political counterpart, democracy, is based on the obvious conviction that I am motivated by my own interests. Furthermore, it rightly presumes that I know my interests better than anyone else. The theory is that if you take a group of people and set them free to pursue their own interests, better things will happen than if someone else defines their interests for them. In order for people to be free to pursue their own interests, however, they need to know what those interests are and possess the ability to pursue them. The increasing disparities in education and income among Americans threaten to make our democratic and capitalist claims into a farce. 3/4, 75% of Americans age 18 to 25 can't even join the military because they are overweight, or because they have a criminal record, or because they don't have a high school diploma. The problem isn't that we have too much free enterprise, it's that we have too little. When economic and political disparities among people grow large, it's a sign that the circle of those who have the skills and resources to pursue their self-interest is too small. The challenge is to find a way to extend capitalism's founding principle to everyone. Consider the following analogy. The self-interest that fuels the free market system is a force of nature, like the sun and rain. For its part, the sun shines at will, oblivious to whether the plants below are hungry for warmth or already parched from the heat. The rain descends, unconcerned about whether floods have already saturated the landscape. In the face of nature's indifference, the challenge of human civilization is to harness the forces of nature for our good while protecting ourselves from their excesses. Like the sun and wind, the free market creates economic harvests of almost unimaginable bounty. But also, like forces of nature, the free market is indifferent to its effects upon specific individuals or cities or even nations. Our challenge is to civilize capitalism, to harness the power of the free market while coming to the aid of those low and increasingly middle-class people who have been devastated by its excesses. As it turns out, Adam Smith would agree. In an important new book titled Adam Smith, An Enlightened Life, Nicholas Phillipson argues persuasively that self-interest is not the sole centerpiece of Smith's economic views. In fact, Smith was an ambivalent champion of the free market. He didn't believe markets always worked at all, much less that they worked perfectly. Nor did he believe that markets could function effectively without government intervention. Perhaps more surprisingly, Smith believed humans were driven by a motivation even more fundamental than self-interest. It was, brace yourself, sympathy. Adam Smith's first major work, titled The Theory of Moral Sentiments, explains how we learn the principles of morality. Our moral sentiments develop from the natural curiosity all human beings have about the well-being of others. This feeling of mutual sympathy, as Smith calls it, is the basis of all forms of human communication. The reason we tend to pursue riches and avoid poverty, Smith says, is that our sympathetic imagination leads us to care about what others think of us, as they presumably care about what we think of them. This deep-seated concern for others leads us to embrace what Smith calls the sacred laws of justice, which curb our self-interest when it threatens to damage the common good. When Jonathan Sacks was chief rabbi of Great Britain, he wrote a book titled The Dignity of Difference. Its subtitle reads, How to Avoid the Collapse of Civilization. In it, Sacks writes, economic superpowers, seemingly invincible in their time, have a relatively short lifespan. Venice in the 17th century, Venice in the 16th century, the Netherlands in the 17th, France in the 18th, Britain in the 19th, and the United States in the 20th. The great religions, by contrast, survive. Islam is 1,500 years old, Christianity 2,000, and Judaism 4,000. These great religions remind us, Sacks writes, that civilizations survive not by strength, but by how they respond to the weak, not by power, but by their concern for the powerless. The ironic yet utterly humane lesson of history is that what renders a culture invulnerable is the compassion it shows to the vulnerable. The ultimate value we should be concerned to maximize is human dignity, the dignity of all human beings equally, as children of the creative, redeeming God. The moral sentiments upon which our nation is based include a commitment not only to what is best for each of us, but also to what is best for everyone else. At its best, capitalism, along with its political counterpart, democracy, serves to maximize human dignity by including everyone. To the extent that we honor these fundamental commitments, we remain true to our calling as Americans. When we do not, we dishonor our nation and debase our morality. At its worst, capitalism becomes a deadly and devastating force, like a hurricane or a release of poison gas. Our role as a religious community is to be the conscience of our nation. We bear witness to our nation's moral aspirations and pass judgment upon our nation's moral failures. The early Christian writer St. Jerome once described conscience as an eagle. I imagine that eagle soaring high above the public square. From that vantage point, an eagle can see the big picture, ends more than means, overall purposes more than specific plans. The role of the religious community is not to chart a path for our nation to follow, but rather to make sure we're headed in the right direction and that we're all moving together. Our numbers may be few, but our faith is unwavering and our voice is strong. As Margaret Mead put it, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Amen. I love you, and may God bless us all.